Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week with some brand new music. Car Bomb has put out a new single after however long it's been since they've last released music. I figure it's been a long time since we've checked out some Car Bomb too. So we're going to dive into their latest song, which is Paroxysm. I think that's how you pronounce that. It is their first single off of their upcoming EP, Tiles Whisper Dreams. How do they come up with this stuff? All right, 3 minutes of Car Bomb. That feels like it's probably going to be a minute too much for my feeble mind, but let's dive into this and see what they're bringing to the table today. Yep, that's Car Bomb. That was an interesting retardando into this. Interesting guitar tone, sharp but rounded. Oh, jeez. Even with the crash cymbal backbeat, it's still hard to... Deftones? That precise palm muting sounds so sick. Nice percussive tone on the guitars. Yeah, I said it was probably going to be a minute too long for me. Yeah, I was lost like 15 seconds in. Solid Car Bomb writing. I don't really think that my understanding of the song, anything of the song changed from from the first 15 seconds through the rest of the track. I don't get it. But I will say that it went by faster than I expected, given that I knew it was going to be some utterly extreme mathcore. What I did not expect, though, was some Deftones-inspired, detuned, clean vocals, and a couple of sections that straight up sounded like they wanted to out Meshuggah Meshuggah. It'll be interesting to see where Car Bomb takes this and develops it in their upcoming tracks on their upcoming EP. As for this song in particular, though, I mean, usually we listen to music, and I listen to it in a slightly different way than most of you, and that's why you listen to what I have to say, because I'm like, oh, I heard these things that maybe you didn't. This is one of those cases where I don't think that's true. I'm pretty sure we heard the exact same thing in here. In fact, maybe if you listen to more of this extreme metalcore than I do, mathcore than I do, which I don't listen to any, honestly, maybe this makes more sense to you than it did to me. Maybe you'd actually have some interesting things to say. To me, all I hear is, in a sense, noise, but not in the realm of like noise rock, where it's purposefully using noisy textures in order to create an atmosphere. This is wild and chaotic use of pitch and rhythm. There's also harmonic elements in here. Of course, we do have chords being played. If you take a bunch of the single notes in these sections, you can also create a key for the song, or maybe even just a key for some sections. Maybe the key is shifting throughout too. There are a couple of minor, I don't know if I'd call them emotional shifts, because I do find the song to just generally be aggressive and chaotic. I don't think that I hear any emotional shifts, but I do hear a couple of places that seem to have different harmonic elements to them. Maybe there are some things being changed over the course of the song, but a lot of the focus to me is on rhythm and melody, with rhythm sort of being the more stronger emphasis there. I really have no idea what's going on rhythmically. I find it very difficult to keep up. I started from the get-go assuming that Car Bomb was going to do what mathcore does really well, which is write songs in 4/4 that don't sound like they're in 4/4. And that is true for a few places that I could catch that, but I'm not sure that that is consistently true throughout the song. They may be using some odd time signatures or odd meter linearity where every bar is a different time signature. That's a possibility in some places too. Regardless, I kind of got a 4/4 at the beginning of the song, but if it was, it's not represented in any of the rhythmic patterns in the song itself. It is a polyrhythmic backbeat that I made up in my head to group this, that part of the song into bars of four. That wasn't really part of the song at all. Like I said, I made it up in my head to create this box, this container to put the song into, which, I mean, yeah, that's possible too. Meshuggah is also really good at that. Writing a song in 4/4, but not presenting that 4/4 backbeat anywhere. It's technically in 4/4, but you would never hear that. You have to make up a new click in your head to create that 4/4 that the song is based around. That might be what's going on here. Maybe I'm just making things up to try to find some sort of pattern to cram this into that maybe it doesn't want to be. You never really know with Car Bomb. But beyond that moment and the very straightforward 4/4, such as us getting that quarter note backbeat on the crash cymbal about like a minute 45 or 2 minutes into the track, I have no idea what the time signatures are on this track. I can't find patterns to the rhythms either. This isn't something I would ever be able, not ever, but it's not something that I can repeat back in any sort of accuracy off of a first time listen. It seems to be consistently inventing itself, not ever looking back to the past to, copy an idea from or borrow an idea or to repeat a cycle in any way. That's probably not true. It probably is cyclical or pattern based. I don't see the point where the pattern ends and repeats. I can't find where one is in any of this. And that just makes it difficult to hear any of that. So it ends up feeling linear, even if it isn't. Melodically, it kind of follows in that same fashion. There are pitches being changed. It's not just like it's one pitch over and over on these jagged rhythms, but I also can't find any sort of fluidity or pattern to when we change pitches, where we are going with the pitches. It doesn't seem to be applying any sort of general functional ideas to the melody. It doesn't seem to be based on melody writing in other genres that I might be able to anticipate where melody is going based off of convention. This seems to just continue to, go down its own path, just like it does rhythmically. It's really difficult to anticipate, even more difficult to follow. And so there are melodic qualities to it, but I can't interpret them. I don't know what they're saying. It is written in a totally different, not a different language. It's not like we have avant-garde playing here, but it's just in a different dialect or maybe an accent we can use in this metaphor, that I'm just having a really tough time getting through that surface level thing to get to the meaning of it all. And that's just something that familiarity would help with. Much like the rhythmic elements, the more I listen to it, the more I'd begin to understand it. But on a first time listen, it's just kind of random and chaotic. And yeah, I don't have much to add to that. The other thing to bring up, I suppose, is the vocals. They're kind of just harsh vocals all the time. Not much to add there. But I do want to touch on the production of this, particularly looking at that penultimate guitar riff, the palm muted one with the really short staccato hits, just, very percussive guitar playing right there. Part of that is the palm muting. It is playing as shortly as you can, but I think another part of that is going to be in the production, just touching them up ever so much. Maybe, cutting it off just, a fraction of a second just to give it even more punchiness. Not anything to create, they're faking the guitar playing or anything like that, but just general production, shaving off the harsh edges kind of stuff. Amplifying what's already there more so than crafting something that isn't. I don't want anyone to come at me saying, hey, you said that Car Bomb doesn't play their own music or anything like that. No. This is just typical production stuff. Regardless, it sounds fantastic. And that really made me think about all of the production on the song. The drums, the bass, the guitars, the vocals, the chaos of it all, but the clarity. It is a gritty, filthy mix overall, but it's also clear. This is not muddy in any way. It is a gnarly overall texture to the song, but you can hear everything. They have their place in the mix. It's incredibly crisp. And when you get to moments like that, where you have these really fast, rapid fire 16th notes, very short staccato tones, and there's almost no overlap between one note to the next, that type of crispness really requires a keen eye from your producer to create something that is clear and effective. And it's what allows the song to be as sharp as it is, what allows it to have as much punch and attack as it does, because there is such this, this attention to detail on the production side. And I really appreciate that. I don't really get the composition. Maybe this is just a song you're supposed to just feel, right? Like the opposite of post-rock, but in that same realm, where post-rock, you're just supposed to be absorbed into the atmosphere and you're not supposed to think about it too much. Don't think about Car Bomb too much, just absorb it. But instead of, beautiful textures and atmospheres, we're hyper aggressive rhythms and melodies. But yeah, the production is just fantastic on this. And I think it helps everything stand out. And for a song as complex and gritty and overworked in some places, there's a lot of stuff going on in a couple of these sections. Having that clarity in sound, I think, is really important to creating a song that allows the technicality to be felt and heard. Let me hit some lyrics on this. I doubt it's going to give me any clarity on the music, but, we got to check out the lyrics. I'm going to try to figure this out as I go. I've read it twice through. I have some thoughts, some ropes that I can pull on and see what's at the end of them, but I haven't come to a full understanding of this yet. I do find it quite evocative, though. The beginning says, late night, toy trucks go hard. Paid in, Mirage Authority. Now, paid in Mirage Authority, there's a comma at every time I took a break, by the way. You get 2 syllables, and that's about it. But the Mirage Authority would be a power that isn't real. It looks real, but it isn't. That's a mirage. Now, the late night toy trucks going hard. I keep coming back to this. I don't know if it's supposed to be talking about the mentality of who we are talking about in this song, that they play with toy trucks, so they have a childlike mentality, or if the toy trucks are supposed to be an allusion to trucks that are treated like toys but actually aren't. Which again could still be talking about the childlike mentality, just not focusing primarily on the child, but also in how what they play with affects others. It says, stay gold, rage hard through the night, rage on it. Brutal silence, pay with your soul for all that's worth. So basically here saying that you can be angry all you want, but if you're silent about it, you're not getting anything done. You're paying with your soul, and they don't think that's worth a lot. So he says, get back on all fours because you've earned it. Better put that gun in your mouth. You're so owned, crying in the filth, crying in the sun, owned by the sleepy one. I thought it was really interesting to see the idea of so owned coming up. You don't really see that phrase too much. I mean, obviously we have like a slavery type of ownership, which we don't usually use the phrase that people are owned too often, even though the US, is Car Bomb US based? I think they are, right? American metal band from, oh, New York. Okay. So we don't really use the term owned too often in that regard. To me, it harkens back to the 90s and 2000s online culture of being owned, which basically means that you were defeated in internet argument, in a video game, in whatever. You got owned. And but the other time that I do see it come up often is in political discourse. In the modern day, the idea of owning the libs, which is one of the dumbest things I've heard, but whatever. It seems to be a big point for one party over here. And so I've really been curious if this is a political song then. Either that or their vocabulary is just rooted in 20-year-old internet slang, which would be equally wild too, because I just don't see that anywhere, much less, music from the 2000s, much less anything today. So I don't know. I found that to be really interesting that you're owned by the sleepy one. So owned. That I think is also kind of leading back to some internet vocabulary to not just be owned, but so owned that your defeat was monumental. Crying in the filth and crying in the sun. It says, for things seem to come too easy. For once you realize the mirror that reflects the despised, there's no solace in yourself, just constant boredom. So you look in the mirror and all you see are the things that you hate. And so you're just bored here. It says you cattle prod yourself to the right pain by the sleepy one. Comprise this sage hypocrite back in your face. The idea that you're so bored and so totally controlled by the sleepy one that you find yourself constantly bored, angry at everything, primarily at yourself, taking it out on others, and even harming yourself because the sleepy one told you to, that you're taking all of this sage advice and you're being a hypocrite with it. The advice isn't sagery anyways. I still think that's a bit of a satirical element. But it talks about somebody who is basically shooting themselves in their foot, constantly working against their own self-interests because they're being manipulated by someone who is taking their anger and rage at themselves and allowing them to point it outward. This comes to the title of the song. It says, Paroxysm, Raging You On. I went and looked up what paroxysm is, and it is a sudden outburst of emotion or action. A sort of spasm or fit could also represent a sudden attack or intensification of a disease. And I like that. The fact that it can mean both an emotional outburst, it can mean all these, a physical outburst, and the intensification of a disease. It says the paroxysm is raging you on. You collect the demons and the traces of a silent war, but just stay gold and rage hard through the dark. With your brutal silence, you'll pay with your soul. So it all comes down to someone who is so angry with themselves. And the sleepy one gives them a way to funnel that out, but it requires them to act against their own self-interest. But they get to be angry at someone other than themselves, and that is a good enough trade-off for them. They are now going to be complicit and silent in whatever else happens. They're paying with their soul, for all that that's worth, the ability to funnel out anger and rage against someone other than their own, even though it'll hurt them in the end. Being manipulated by the sleepy one. Now, I think generally speaking, this could talk about a lot of things. It is vague enough. But it makes me wonder what Carbon was specifically talking about here. I wonder if they have an, what are they called? Interview about this track, where maybe they've explained a little bit more about their subject. Because I'd be intrigued to kind of know what they're going on about. Regardless, I do think it's an interesting track. Musically, it's still not my cup of tea, but I am intrigued by the lyrics, which I think is fairly consistent with my experience with Car Bomb. But I'd have to go back and double check that. Music intense, lyrics intriguing. That's Car Bomb in a nutshell. These are my thoughts, though, on Paroxysm by Car Bomb. What are yours? Is there anything in here that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own thoughts, opinions, or interpretation on this. Please put all of that in the comment section, as well as anything else you'd like to add. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we're going to check out an entire album. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.